If you brought your Bibles with you this morning, you can open them up to Luke chapter 2, verses 4 through 7. This is a Christmas story that a lot of times we overlook a key detail of. And I want to just zero in on something that maybe we've missed in the past. But the story picks up where Joseph and Mary are traveling to Bethlehem, the city that Joseph is from, for a census. And while they are there for the census, they go around looking for a place to stay. And that's where we pick up our story in Luke chapter 2, verses 4 through 7. It says, "Now Joseph went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and the family of David, in order to register along with Mary, who was betrothed to him and was pregnant. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and she wrapped him in cloths and laid him in a manger because there was no room for him in the inn." That's our key passage that I want us to park in for just a minute. There was no room for them in the inn. Why is this important? Why is that important? See, we're looking at the story of the Savior of the world who came to the world for us so that he could grow to become the sacrifice of the world. He could be the salvation of the world. Why do we want to pause on the fact that there was no room for him in the inn? Well, I think it's important because if we're being honest this Christmas season, we can oftentimes be a bit more like the innkeepers of Bethlehem than we want to admit, can't we? How many of you get distracted during the Christmas season? How many of you guys, you get crowded during the Christmas season? There's so many things going on. There's so many places to be. You've got to make sure that you spend time with this family member. Don't forget that present. Make sure you wrap this. Make sure you go here. And we get into this Christmas season, and there's so many things going on in our life that our lives become so full that we forget about the fact that there is a king in our midst. That there is a king all around us. And I believe that what we need to do in this Christmas season is pause and ask the question, is there room for Jesus in my life? See, here's the thing about the people in Bethlehem. They were good people. They were just crowded. They were good people. They just had no space. See, nobody did anything wrong in this story. There was just no space in the inn. I remember as a family, we would do a lot of family road trips growing up. And when it would get late, my dad would start looking at the signs of the hotel, and we'd always be looking for a sign that said vacancy. We knew if there was a sign that said no vacancy, that inn was full and there was no room for us, so we were looking for space. Here's the reality. Sometimes we can get annoyed if we go to a place and there's no space for us, but the reality is the people that were in that inn had a right to be there. They paid for a room. They got there first. Nobody did anything wrong. The reality is they just ran out of space for the one that mattered most. And so I have a question for us. Do you feel like sometimes your life is so full, even with good things, that there's little space left for Christ? If we look through the room, if we did inventory of the rooms in our life, listen, we've got good things, just like the good people that were in those inns in Bethlehem. They were good people taking up space that they deserved, but the problem was it created an environment where there was no room left for Jesus. And I wonder if we stop and did stock of our lives, if we went into every room in our spirits and we asked ourselves the question, is there something in here that is crowding out room that I could be filling with Jesus? And we've got good things. I'm not telling you that you have to go and become a monk and do away with everything in your life, but we do have to make sure that at the end of the day that we are not so full that when Jesus shows up, there's a sign over our life that says no vacancy. I'm sorry, I'd love it. I'd love to be able to, I believe the innkeeper would love to have been able to make room for a pregnant woman. I believe the innkeeper would have loved to be able to solve that problem, but the reality was his inn was too full and he could not because his rooms were committed. The question for us this morning is, where have I committed space that should be belonging to Jesus? Do you ever feel like you're trying your best, but in everything that's going on in your life, as hard as you try, at the end of the day, you sit down at the end of the day, you're like, man, I didn't read my Bible today. Man, I forgot to pray. Man, I haven't talked to God. When was the last time I had a conversation with Jesus? When was the last time that I made space for him? Jesus himself said in Matthew chapter 8, verses 20, it didn't just stop at his birth. It carried on through the rest of his life. Jesus, many years later, said, foxes have dens to live in, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He was born into a world that didn't have room for him, and he grew into a man in a world that still did not have room for him. And what Jesus does is that Jesus steps into whatever space we will give him. That's why he was born in a manger, not because it was ideal, but because it was available. Jesus was born into a manger because that was the only bed that they could lay him in. There was no other space for him, so he stepped into it, not because it was the best place. I guarantee you right now, Mary had qualms about putting her brand new baby in a feeding trough for animals. Any mothers in the room know what I'm talking about? You're like, no, like, not happening. But that was the only space that he could be laid, and so they had to make do with what they had, and it wasn't ideal, but it was available. My question for you this morning is, are you available? Do you have room for Jesus in your life? Because a lot of times we waste years of our life trying to make sure that the space that we offer God is ideal, and all he's looking for is availability. You don't have to be put together. You don't have to be polished. You don't have to be perfect. He's not looking for a palace. He's just looking for a place. And a lot of times we waste years of our life like, God, I'm going to get my act together. And when I get my act together, I'm going to start serving you. And I'm going to make space for you. And then we go through our life realizing that the one that was going to make us put together is the one that we kept on the outside and didn't invite in the first place. And there's no room for us because we're trying to make something better for him when he's like, let me come in and I will make it better. He's not looking for a palace. He is just looking for a place. He doesn't require perfection. He just requires submission. He's not looking for you to be perfect and to have all the answers and to be a good person. He just wants you to be submitted and say, God, all that I have is yours. All that I have is a manger. It doesn't look good. It doesn't smell good. It's got problems. Can we acknowledge that parts of our life have problems? You don't need to hide that away from Jesus. You can just invite him into it, because here's the amazing thing is that Jesus transforms any space that he's invited into. How many of you guys know something? Mangers got a massive PR upgrade when Jesus discovered them. Before Jesus found mangers, they were a doggy bowl. Before Jesus came into contact with mangers, they were a place that you fed animals. But now that Jesus has come into contact with mangers, every time we say the name manger, we think of Jesus. Now, I can tell you something else as well. You might be known by something. You might have an identity. You might have a reputation. But if Jesus shows up and Jesus is invited into your story, your reputation changes. Your purpose changes. Your name changes. Everything changes. And the people that used to speak bad about you will be put to shame. Oh, you used to be worthless. You used to be good for nothing. Well, guess what? Jesus entered my life. And I used to be a manger before, but now I'm an instrument that is carrying the Savior of the world. He lives inside of me. So I don't look like that anymore. That might have been how you experienced me, but then Jesus showed up and Jesus redeemed me. Can I tell you something this morning? That he is looking for open hearts and open doors. Will you invite him in? When you make room for Jesus in your story, he makes room for you in his. The amazing part about the nativity story is we think about all these characters in the nativity story. Whenever you look at a nativity story outside, like in the decorations in people's lawns or in your houses, you always have the shepherds. You always have the wise men. You always have the sheep. You put the animals in there first. You know who is never in a nativity scene that I've ever seen in Walmart? The innkeeper. The innkeeper's never there. And it's so funny to me because it's his barn. But he's not in the scene because he had room for Jesus in his property, but not in his life. The shepherds dropped what they were doing and they ran to be with Jesus. The wise men, even though they were nations apart, they dropped what they were doing and they came ahead of time to come and be with Jesus. Even the animals showed up. But this innkeeper who had space on his property, but not in his life. He had Jesus in his backyard, but not in his presence. And then when Jesus shows up, now every time we tell the nativity story, we think about the people that were actually there. And so I have a question for you again today. Do you make room for Jesus in the areas that are easy or the areas that give him access? When we give Jesus space in the areas that give him access, Jesus invites us into his story. And then the people that encounter us encounter not only us, but Jesus. And I'm telling you something this morning that I think that a lot of times in our life, we get so full and we get so crowded that we miss out on the things that matter most. This innkeeper was so preoccupied with the guests that were inside the inn, he missed out on the king that was being born in his barn. And can I tell you that sometimes we just need a wake-up call? And sometimes a holiday season can be good for a wake-up call, can it? Sometimes it takes those pivotal, life-changing moments like Christmas. How many of you guys have ever just realized that it's 2026 in a couple of weeks? Where did the time go? I have no idea where that time went. The year was gone like that. And I need a holiday season to make me pause for a second, to push aside all the stuff that I'm doing. I told my wife, come Monday morning, I'm not doing anything. We're just having family time. Why? Because it's Christmas. So there's stuff to do, but it doesn't matter. I want to spend time with my family and my kids. Why? Because the season causes me to pause. And it's unfortunate that sometimes we have to wait for a season like Christmas to remember Jesus, or a situation like a crisis to remember Jesus. You know, last night as I was going over my message notes, my mind was wandering, so I started doom scrolling on social media. Anybody else? Just reel after reel. And while I was in the middle of my nonsense, I stumbled across an interview with an actor that everybody that is my age and of the greatest generation will know, James Van Der Beek. Dawson's Creek, let's go. All the Gen Z people in here are like, I have no idea what you're talking about, sir. You know? And James Van Der Beek, if you did not know, he's been diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. And he was being interviewed, and he told the person that was interviewing him, the interviewer said, what have you learned? What has been the most interesting revelation you've had in this season of life? What's been the biggest discovery? And James Van Der Beek said, before I had cancer, God was something I tried to fit into my life as much as possible. He said, after cancer, I feel like a connection to God is kind of the whole point of this exercise on this planet. See, before I got sick, before I paused, I tried to just squeeze God in wherever I could. I think that's the reality for a lot of us, if we're being honest. Like, we try to just fit God into whatever space we can make room for. God is a Jenga piece, and we're trying to find the perfect spot to fit him into. We're playing Tetris with God, trying to find a perfect shape that we can squeeze him into. But I have a question for you this morning. What if he was more important than that? What if he wasn't something that you tried to squeeze into a holiday season or into a Sunday morning, but you actually let him be the whole point of this human exercise on this planet? What if you actually made room for him? What would it look like if we made room for Jesus in our lives, like really made room for him? What would it look like if we made room for him in more than just a Christmas service? If we made room for him on more than just a Sunday morning, in more than just our commute to work on the way, on the weekdays? Are you with me? What if you made room for him in the coming new year? What if you said, I want 2026 to be the year that I just open up and invite God into, and I say, God, you come in and you have your way. I don't want you in the barn anymore. I want you in the main house. I want you in every part of my life. What if you said, God, it's yours, take it. I'm invited, get out of the manger and get into my heart. What would it look like in your marriage if you invited him into the conversations and those circular arguments you keep on having with your spouse? What would it look like if you invited him into your relationship with your children that's really strained right now? What would it look like if you invited him into your finances and said, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I need your math to come in and take over. What would it look like if you made space for him? Can you imagine it this morning? Can you imagine it? What could he multiply in your life? What could he make greater? What Christmas miracle is awaiting you if you make space? You know, I read the story a while ago about the Christmas candle. The Christmas candle is a story about a small village that believed that God would grant one miracle every year through a special Christmas candle. They believed that if you could grab onto this special Christmas candle, that God would use it to perform a miracle. And whoever was holding the candle would be the beneficiary of that Christmas miracle. And when they first discovered this, everybody in the village was excited. And so they were going out looking for the people with the biggest needs. Like, oh, give the Christmas candles to them because they have a big need. Make sure they get the candle this year because they need it more than I do. And there was joy, and there was sharing, and there was gladness, and they were making sure that the people in the community that needed it most got the miracle. But as time went on, as happens for all of us, sometimes we can get a little disgruntled when other people get blessed and we don't. And they started noticing, well, hey, how come they always get how come these people always get their needs met? How come they always get the miracle and I miss out on mine? When am I going to get my miracle? Maybe some of you are sitting in here today and you're like, where's my breakthrough going to come? When's my miracle going to happen? When's my door going to open? And so what started to happen is the more they started to think about themselves, the more they started to keep the candle to themselves. And when somebody was given the candle, instead of it being something that was celebrated, instead of it being something that was enjoyed by all, they would start to keep it to themselves. They'd start to hide it. Don't look, it's mine. They'd start to close the doors. They'd draw the curtains in their house. I don't want anyone to know that I have a candle. I don't want anyone to know that I'm being blessed. I want to keep the blessing to myself. And then they would start to argue over who gets it. Why do you get it? It's my turn. And they would start to fight amongst one another. And they would argue about who deserved it more, and it became a time of contention. It became a time of arguments. It became a time of dissension and division in the community. And this thing that was once a blessing now became a liability. And at some point, the pastor of the local church retired, and a new pastor came in to take his place, and he had the gift of perspective. How many of you guys, you need people in your life that are outside of you that can come in and tell you when you're acting silly? And he comes in having never lived in this community, and he said, what are you guys doing? This is Christmas. This is a time where we're supposed to be generous. This is a time where we're supposed to be kind-hearted. This is a time we're supposed to share with one another. What are you doing? And he saw people in the church, they're fighting over this candle. Who gets it? Who gets it? And in the middle of a service, a commotion breaks out, and people are fighting over this candle. It's mine. I deserve it. If I can't have it, nobody can. And the pastor reaches out, and he snatches the candle from their hands. And he asks this question: what if the miracle isn't in owning the light? What if the miracle is in sharing the light? Can you stand up, bro? So he goes to one of the people in the church. He said, hey, I have the candle. Why don't you light yours on mine? Go ahead. And if you wouldn't mind, will you just light the ladies next to you? Would you come up? I just want to share it with you. I don't want to keep it to myself. I want to make sure that I don't just hoard the blessing that I've been given. It went out. Can you come up here and light my candle again? If you don't mind? See, here's the amazing thing is when I share the light with somebody else, that if anything ever happens to mine, I have somebody that can share it with me. But when I keep it to myself and I lose it, I have nobody else that can bless me. You see how that works? And so he keeps sharing it with everybody around. And before too long, listen to me, everybody in the church had their candle lit with the same flame. And everybody in the community was able to receive the same blessing because they had the same light from the same candle. And here's the reality. Instead of losing the light, the room was filled with it. Ray, would you mind turning off the lights up ahead? Instead of losing the light, the room was filled with it. And a room that should have been dark was now illuminated because everybody shared the blessing and shared the miracle. So here's the reality. God wasn't the one limiting the light. They were. God's not the one that doesn't make room. Are you with me? We are. And I believe that more miracles happen when people made room for Jesus instead of making room for ourselves. When we make room, Jesus fills whatever we offer him. If we live small and closed off, we actually limit how much space we have for him and others. But if we live openly, when we make more room, we create space for his light to spread. And look across this entire room. This entire room is illuminated because one person made room and shared with everyone else around them. We create space for the light of Jesus to spread in this Christmas season. Can I tell you that the Christmas story is a reminder that God made room for us even when we wouldn't make room for him? That the first Christmas candle was the light that came to a little town called Bethlehem. And even though there was no room for him, he filled the space that was given to him, and he continued to make room for us. So as we light these candles, let this be the start of us making room for his light in our lives. I believe that this can be the start of us saying, you know what, moving into 2026, into a new year, I don't really believe in New Year's resolutions, but moving into the new year, I'm going to make a New Year's declaration. I'm going to make a New Year's promise that I'm going to make room for Jesus and for his light.